I was on a work trip and behind schedule because storms delayed my flight. I still had to drive to a client in the morning, so I left the airport and took the Interstate West. The rain was heavy and the wind pushed my small rental. Around 11:30, I pulled off near a gas station and a diner and checked into a roadside motel with outside doors. The neon vacancy sign buzzed. It was fine for one night. Inside, I did my routine. I locked the door, slid the metal latch, and checked the window. I set my phone to charge, laid my wet jacket across the heater, and turned the lamp off. The room smelled like old carpet. Weather app warning until 2 o'clock. I lay down. The rain hit the door like gravel. I was drifting to sleep when 3 hard knocks snapped me awake. A man's voice came through the door, calm and level. "Sir, I need help." My car slid off the road. I went to the peephole. I could only see the edge of a baseball cap and a dark jacket. He stood so close his face was hidden. He did not knock on the next door. He stayed at mine. "I'll call for help," I said. "I need to use your phone," he said. "My battery died." "Just open for a second." "I'll call," I said. "What is your name?" He waited. "John," he said by the entrance. I tried the front desk from the room phone. It rang and rang. I tried again. No answer. I dialed 911 and gave the dispatcher the motel name and address. I told her a man wanted me to open my door. She told me to stay inside and that a deputy would come by when he could. While I was on the line, the man knocked again, softer. "Sir," he said, "I'm not leaving." The dispatcher asked me to describe him. I said, "Jacket, cap, average height, standing too close." She asked if I had heard anyone else. I listened. At first, only rain. Then I caught another voice, a whisper off to the side. I lifted the curtain an inch. Under the balcony overhang, I saw 2 shapes. One stood at my door. The other kept to the corner where the walkway turned, holding a phone to catch movement inside. When my curtain shifted, he dropped the phone. I pushed the dresser toward the door and wedged the luggage rack under the handle. I slid my suitcase against the connecting door. My hands shook. The keys rattled. The voice at the door changed slightly. Still calm but lower. "Sir, I'm with the front desk," he said. "We leak and need to check your bathroom." He had told me a different story 1 minute earlier. I said nothing. Metal scraped where the latch met the frame. The chain pulled tight and hummed. The scraping stopped. He exhaled. For a moment, there was only rain and thunder, then quick footsteps moving away. I lifted the curtain again. The 2 shapes jogged toward the far stairwell and out of sight. I heard a door thud, an engine start, tires pushing water. No headlights. Minutes later, red and blue lights washed my curtains. A deputy announced himself. I asked to see his badge through the peephole. This time I saw a face and a uniform. I opened the door with the chain still on. The night clerk stood behind him. They checked the walkway. Thin scratches marked the paint around my latch. Muddy prints led from the far stairs to my door and back toward the rear lot. The deputy checked the ditch by the road. There was no wreck, no skid marks, and no stranded car. The clerk said a woman at the gas station had complained earlier about men trying car doors under the pump canopy. She left before he could call. The deputy said similar attempts had been reported at small motel during storms. The clerk tried to pull up the camera feed on his tablet, but the system kept buffering. He said the wiring got wet when the rain blew under the awning. The deputy shrugged, said it happens during storms. He wrote down the make of my rental and the room number in his notebook. He took my statement and told me to keep the chain on and not answer for anyone. After he left, I sat with the lights on and watched the stairwell. Every hiss of a car on the highway made me tense. I did not sleep again. At dawn, the storm moved east. The lot steamed and smelled like wet oil. I checked out and saw the thin arcs in the paint by the latch. I took a photo and texted it to the deputy, who replied with a case number. I drove to a coffee shop and sat with my back to the wall and my bag on my feet. I had my meeting, but I kept scanning the windows. On the way home, I booked a hotel with inside hallways. I still wedged the door, set the latch, and hang the Do Not Disturb sign. When someone knocks late now, I do not answer. I call the desk. If there is an emergency, they can call the police. What stuck with me was the tone, calm, practiced. He said he was not leaving, like patience was the tool. That almost worked on me. I wanted to be helpful. The storm made his story sound reasonable. The calm voice made it feel safe, and it was not. I think about that night whenever I pass an outside entry motel. I think how close I came to sliding the chain off just to be polite. I keep a simple rule now. Do not open the door for anyone you did not call.
Call for them instead.
If they are real, they will wait. If they are not, they will leave. It was a wet Tuesday night in Boston. I left work near CP Place Square later than usual and started riding home on my bike. The sky was already dark and a hard rain hit the Back Bay sidewalks. I cut over to Beacon Street, headlight on, jacket hood up, trying to keep my phone and wallet dry. At Arlington Street, I looked toward the Charles River. The Esplanade was almost empty. Stores sent a constant spray as cars passed. I knew the little stone tunnels under Stew that connect Beacon Street to the Esplanade. They're short pedestrian underpasses with curved ceilings and old graffiti. If I crossed there, I could follow the river and then take the Massachusetts Avenue Bridge toward Cambridge. It would keep me away from traffic and the worst puddles. The rain came harder. I saw the Fairfield Street footbridge and the dark mouth of the tunnel below the road. There were no park rangers around. The lamps near the railing flickered. I told myself I'd be in and out in seconds. I shifted down, rolled off the curb, and coasted into the underpass. My light hit the stone. The tunnel was narrow and wet. Water dripped from a seam and made a steady tapping sound. My tires hissed on the slick concrete. The echo made it feel longer than it is. I could see a slice of the river on the far side beyond the arch halfway through. I squeezed my brakes and sat up. At the far end, where the tunnel opens to the Esplanade, a person stood just outside the light. At first, I thought it was a jogger waiting for the rain to ease up, but they didn't move. They weren't holding a phone or looking out at the river. They were turned toward me, feet apart, hands low, hood up. "Hey," I said, just to be normal. The tunnel threw the word back at me in a flat echo. No answer. The figure took one slow step forward, and then stopped. It wasn't much, but it put them squarely in the center of the exit. My light caught a shine on their jacket. I couldn't see the face. The rain beyond them looked like a gray curtain. I glanced behind me toward Beacon Street. That's when I saw the second person slip into the tunnel I had just entered. He stood near the wall, closer to me than the first one, like he'd been waiting under the bridge. He didn't say anything either. He kept his head down, shoulders forward, and started walking toward me. The underpass felt a lot smaller. I did the math. If I turned around, I would go straight into the second guy. If I went forward, I would ride at the one blocking the exit. There isn't much room to pass in those tunnels. One person can stand wide enough to make you choose contact or a collision with the wall. My phone was inside my jacket, zipped. I didn't want to free a hand and lose the bars on wet ground. I rang my little handlebar bell. 3 sharp dings. It sounded weak in the tunnel. I said, "I'm just passing through," and kept my voice even. The guy behind me closed the gap. I heard the soft slap of his shoes. The one ahead stayed centered and still. For a second, I had the dumb idea to stop and talk. Then my brain finally caught up, silent. One in front, one behind, no one else around. It didn't matter what they wanted. I needed space. I stood on the pedals and rolled forward, as if I had decided to go through. My headlight bounced off a stone. I kept my eyes on the person at the exit and aimed my front wheel a bit to the left toward the damp arch where the wall curves. My plan wasn't smart. It was simple. Make them commit, and then use whatever opening they gave me. 10 feet 5. The person at the exit lifted a hand out from the jacket. I saw pale fingers and nothing else. That was the commit. I squeezed both brakes to load the tires, released hard, and snapped my bars to the right toward the middle of the tunnel. My back wheel slid and threw a fan of water. The person flinched, turning their shoulders for a second. I drove straight at that tiny shift, shoulder brushing the wall, elbows up. We clipped each other. My handlebar hit their forearm with a hollow thud, and the bell let out a wild ring. I heard a short, angry sound, not words. My pedal scraped stone, and my knee jolted. The bike wobbled, but stayed under me. I shot past the exit like an arrow out into the rain on the esplanade. I didn't look back at first. I just sprinted on the wet path, legs burning, chain ticking, water in my face. When I reached the open area near the Hatch Memorial Shell, I chanced a glance. Both figures were at the mouth of the tunnel, small in the gray, not running. One lifted an arm in a slow, useless wave. It made my stomach turn. I pulled on to the nearest lit stretch and finally yanked my phone out. My hands were shaking and wet. I hit 911 and gave the dispatcher my location. The Esplanade by Fairfield Street, tunnel under STO, 2 people acting aggressively, blocking both sides. She asked if I was safe. I said I was moving toward the Massave Bridge lights and would wait there. I stopped under a brighter lamp near the Dartmouth Street footbridge and breathed. The Charles was dark and choppy. A couple in ponchos walked fast toward the bridge, without looking at me. Sirens in Boston can come from any direction, and for a minute I couldn't tell if any were for me. I kept watching the path. No one followed. A state police cruiser finally rolled along STO on the road above. The dispatcher called back and asked if I could meet an officer at the corner of Beacon and Dartmouth by the footbridge stairs. I walked my bike up and met 2 troopers and, a few minutes later, a Boston police car. I told them everything from the step forward in the exit to the second guy appearing behind me. They asked if I saw a weapon. I said I didn't, only a hand, but the setup was enough. One trooper went down with a flashlight. Another drove along STO and shone a spotlight.
No one was there by the time they checked.
The rain washed out any clear footprints. They took my info and told me to avoid the tunnels late at night, especially in bad weather, and to stick with the main crossings when I could. I said I knew better and meant it. It was October 2017 around 9:30 p.m. when my old 2008 Honda City sputtered and died on Route 17C just west of Ego, right near that infamous bend everyone calls Devil's Elbow. The rain was coming down in sheets, the kind where your wipers just smear water across the glass instead of clearing it. I'd been heading back from a friend's place in Binkington and decided to take 17C instead of the interstate because of construction on I-86. In hindsight, that little detour was a very bad idea. The stretch of Route 17C west of Oigo, known as Devil's Elbow, has been tied to ghost stories for decades. One of the oldest involves the so-called Lady in White, a pale figure said to appear to drivers during heavy storms or on foggy nights. Some claim she was a young bride killed here in the 1920s when a Model T slid off the embankment on her wedding night. Others say she's the ghost of a hitchhiker struck and left for dead in the 1950s. Most agree she's always dressed in white, often described as a long gown or dress, and that she approaches stalled cars or stands silently at the tree inn watching motorists. In some versions, she knocks softly on windows. In others, she hums or whispers, asking for a ride before vanishing. Locals warn against making eye contact, claiming those who've seen her face later met with misfortune, accidents, sudden illness, even disappearances. Truckers avoid stopping near Devil's Elbow at night, and residents in nearby Tioga County say they've seen her from their porches when storms roll in. Whether she's a ghost, a lingering memory, or just a story to keep people cautious on a dangerous curve, the Lady in White remains one of the Southern Tier's most enduring and unsettling legends. The car died without warning. No clunk, no shudder, no dashboard light, just silence except for the storm hammering the roof. I twisted the key again. Nothing. My phone had one flickering bar of service, but it was enough to call for a tow. The dispatcher, a guy named Mike, said it might be an hour, maybe more. Roads were flooding. "Stay safe," he told me. I locked the doors, switched on the hazards, and tried to breathe. Past Ego, 17C dips and twists along the river, hemmed in by dense woods. Devil's Elbow is a blind S-curve with a steep embankment on one side and thick timber on the other. You don't see the other end until you're halfway through. And there's this feeling, ask any local, like the curve is watching you. About 10 minutes into my wait, I glanced through the passenger window and froze. There was something standing under the tree inn, maybe 50 feet away. Through the blur of rain, I could just make out a figure in pale clothing, head bowed, hair or hood hanging forward, perfectly still. I told myself it was a jogger or a neighbor's kid caught in the storm. But this was the middle of nowhere, and there were no houses in sight. Why stand there in the open instead of flagging me down? I wiped the fog from the glass for a better look, but the rain distorted everything. The figure didn't move. When I looked again a few minutes later, she was closer, 30 feet now, standing by a smaller tree. I hadn't seen her walk. Her outline was sharper. Long dripping fabric clinging to her frame, hair plastered across her face. My stomach tightened. I thumb-med on my phone's flashlight and shone it toward her, but the beam fizzled in the downpour. "Hey," I called through the cracked window. "You okay?" "Nothing, just the rain." Mike rang back. The tow truck was delayed. Route 434 had flooded. Might be another hour. I told him about the woman. Probably just a local. He said, "Stay in your car." But each time I checked, she was closer. Always closer.
15 forint tizedik.
The pale fabric now looked like an old-fashioned dress, the kind you see in sepia wedding photos. Her face, or where her face should have been, was just darkness. "What do you want?" My voice cracked. She didn't answer. Didn't even flinch. I gripped the steering wheel, so tight my hands ached. The storm was loud, but not loud enough to hide my heartbeat thudding in my ears. I thought about running, but where? Into the woods with her behind me down the road with no light. I tried calling 911. The call failed. I typed a text to my friend Josh. "Car broke down on 17C by Devil's Elbow. Woman out here. Not right. No bars. Message unsent." When I looked up again, she was gone. My chest loosened until I heard it. I froze. It came from the rear windshield. The glass was fogged, but I could see a shape, tall, pale, right behind the car. The tapping stopped, but the shadow stayed. I didn't dare turn around. Then came a sound I will never forget. A low, tuneless humming. It was soft at first, almost like someone singing a lullaby from far away, but it grew louder, closer, until it seemed to curl around me inside the car. My hands shook. The humming stopped as suddenly as it began. I forced myself to check the mirror. Empty. I turned to my seat. The road behind was empty, too. I let out a shaky breath, then saw her again, back under the trees, 50 feet away, head down like nothing had happened. I stared, refusing to blink, trying to catch her move. She didn't, but when I glanced at my phone for half a second and looked back, she was 20 foot closer. Locals say if you see her face, you don't make it home. I don't know if that's true, but I wasn't about to find out. The tow truck's headlights finally appeared at 11:03 p.m., glowing through the rain like a lifeline. Tom, the driver, rolled down his window. "You all right? There's a woman." I pointed toward the tree line. He swung his flashlight that way. "Nothing but rain and branches. Road messes with people," he said. "Especially this one." He hooked my car to the rig, and we pulled away. I tried not to look back, but in the red wash of the taillights, just before the curve swallowed her from sight, I saw her standing in the middle of the road, head bowed, dress clinging to her frame. Tom didn't see a thing. They say the lady in white sometimes follows you home, especially if you speak to her. That night, as I sat in my apartment listening to the rain on the windows, I kept thinking I heard it.